And a very pleasant good evening, and welcome to season 2, episode 15 of the QCast. And folks, he's back again, Mike Schauer, the chair of the Men's Basketball National Committee. And he has now moved into a tie for the most frequent QCast guest ever. And boy, Mike, did you ever think that you'd be at the point where you've been on this program more than anyone else?
Well, am I in a tie with Ron Rose?
That's correct.
Yeah, I've been losing to Ron Rose most of the time, so I'll take a tie with Ron. So,
in fairness, he just kind of finally got you for the first time in a long time in the regular season. So we were due on that one, my friend. But
yeah,
we'll leave that one aside, and maybe our teams will play in the conference tournament. But we're here to talk about regional ranking number 2. And boy, it's great to be at this time of year. Last week we got regional ranking 1, Mike, which was alphabetical. We talked all through that and why you did that. And it was all leading up to regional ranking 2, when you can take that base, add some more games played. Now you got the regionally ranked opponent criteria layered in. Talk about the process here in regional ranking 2. How did this all play out? And just walk us through this so people understand how it goes.
Yeah, I'll kind of walk you through exactly how we do it, and then we can kind of talk about some things we're learning as we go through it. Because I think, Bob, one of the things that I've acknowledged a little privately is it's different enough from what we did in the past, given the increased regions, the increased teams ranked, and thus sort of a change in the amount of regionally ranked wins that are considered good, and some of that stuff. Some of us, even that are veteran, are kind of learning the nuance of this new process, not the process, but nuance of the new outcomes at a little bit in real time. So the way they work, we do, Sunday nights, we get our racks submit a straw poll based upon the numbers the NCAA puts out on Sunday. So games are through Sunday. And they basically, with every game on Sunday, once those are done, we get brand new stats, updated criteria. Racks do a straw poll to the chair of each of those racks. On Monday morning, those rack calls take place, and we basically discuss ranking, and I'll use Region 8 as the example, ranking 9 teams. We certainly talk about a 10th and 11th to kind of say, hey, who's next if we were to do it. National call then Tuesday morning, and we go through each region, and it is a laborious process. This was the longest call I have been a part of, and the most difficult call, which we'll get into here in a minute. And we just go through every region, and actually, quite honestly, Bob, we go back through some, because as you go through the process and you start to sort of create some consistency, something, you kind of go, well, we probably need to go back and revisit some of these we did earlier and go make sure that we're as consistent as we can be with what we're doing. And then, by noon Central or so, we were done today, a little earlier than that, and got them posted and open for discussion now. So that's kind of how the process works through a typical, and that's how it'll work here throughout the remainder of the process, is kind of that rhythm.
We've had a really good kind of cadence here of being able to hear from you in various mediums, whether it's Hoopsville or on the QCast or other places. You and the committee have been great about telling us how this works. And, I was joking with you earlier off the air that, as many questions as people might have, my computer friends, Matt Snyder and Drew Pasteur, they still got almost all of these right. Maybe the order was flipped here and there, but across 83 regionally ranked teams, they got probably 77 or 78 correct. And so we appreciate the transparency, and it helps people understand how to do this. Building on that a little bit, you talked about how long this took, and I suspect one of the reasons, and I believe you alluded to this, is kind of the bar is different now. I'm not going to pick on anyone, but Buena Vista 13-11, we have an 11 lost team that's regionally ranked, and we'll get into that situation in a second. But if you're used to the old system with less teams ranked, this has to be kind of shocking looking at some of these resumes at the bottom of these regions, right?
Yeah, Bob. I mean, the truth of the matter is as you know, when we transitioned to 10 regions, we also increased the number of teams we're ranking pretty substantially. So we're now by Division III membership requirement, if that's the right way to say it, ranking 20% of the country of the membership for men's basketball. And candidly, Bob, it's too many, and it really is cumbersome then towards the bottom of these regions as we try to kind of figure out either the resumes are so close because or they're distinctive in criteria that you have a high winning percentage team with low SOS or a low winning percentage team with high SOS. By definition, you probably don't have a lot of regionally ranked wins in it, because if they did, they would be more clearly towards the top of the region. And Bob, we're reviewing resumes now, and these are teams that are having quality years. That's not the point. The point is they do not measure up to the traditional resume that we've ranked in the past. And what's becoming apparent, Bob, is in our call today, we spent about 25% of the time on the teams at the top of the region who will actually be in the conversation for at-large bids, and spent 75% of our time ranking the bottom of the regions. But that's really important because the bottom of the region starts to shape the top of the region. If that means we have to get that right. And so it's a very, very complicated process, because it's not, you're dealing now with resumes that are flawed in some way. And we're considering either high loss teams, 10, 11 loss teams, 8, 9, 10, 11 loss teams, or SOSs that quite candidly we wouldn't have entertained 2 years ago. So to anybody who cares what I think, I would like to publicly state we need to change the percentage of teams we're ranking across the board. It's just too many. We've watered down the process to a level that is diminishing the value of being ranked and diminishing the value of a regionally ranked win. We need to rank less teams.
And that's what we appreciate about Mike, is he'll always let you know how he thinks. And that is a lot of teams, 83 teams, 20% of Division III men's basketball. You mentioned a couple things, choices at the bottom of a region between completely different resumes. And I'm just going to tell everyone this going in, as I told Mike that I really didn't want to spend today going over why you ranked a certain team third and a certain team fourth. There's just too many of those to talk about. And the answer to most of them, it could have gone either way. But I did want to just point out, like, here's Region 4, a decision that had to be made. You got Penn State Harrisburg. Their resume is 909 winning percentage, 429 SOS, and 1-0 regionally ranked. And then Kane is 636 winning percentage, 502 and 3-6 RRO. I think that's the perfect example, not to really get into why you chose to put Kane in and PSU out, but those are dramatically different resumes that you're evaluating at that point, right?
Yeah, dramatically different. And I think to summarize it as best we can, what the committee is searching for is resumes that also then check the quality win box. And so in a lot of these cases, the regionally ranked wins, either numerically or who they were specifically, ended up coming into play pretty significantly. I would just add, and I wouldn't use this, if I say it this way, it's going to sound like I'm using Penn State Harrisburg as the specific example, but I think people understand it. We would all recognize that there's probably a winning percentage that is too low to rank no matter what the SOS is. I don't know where it is on the SOS, but there's kind of an SOS that you're like, hey, this probably isn't high enough. And so there's not an actual numeric value there actually on either side. It's sort of a feel, Bob, that you kind of go, this doesn't feel like a resume that's as strong as the one we're comparing it to. And usually, Bob, and I think if you look at it, the committee leans slightly towards the better SOS is what we sometimes get not accused of, but people point out it appears that's the direction we go. Typically, that's because the teams with the better SOS have played more regionally ranked opponents and probably also have more regionally ranked wins. That's not an absolute, right? But it's pretty consistently that direction.
Another part of this at the bottom of the regions is the impact. your decisions have on the whole process. So like, for example, my friend Matt Snyder today, and it was like Christmas morning when he saw that Trine was ranked, because look, if you've got a couple wins against Trine that you weren't expecting to have as RROs, that there's a big difference in a resume between like 3-3 regionally ranked and 5-3. So as you guys are doing this, I know that you're very aware of the impact of what you're doing at the bottom of these regions. Talk through that a little bit as you guys process that.
Yeah, so I mean, we're certainly aware of it. It really can't come into play. You're really saying, does team A deserve to be in this spot over team B? The ramifications of it don't come into play, but you're very aware that you are strengthening certain resumes and weakening other resumes. And, you can kind of see it. There are going to be teams that you rank one week and based upon what has transpired, they're going to have a hard time being ranked the next week, because in the other regions, we've dropped some of their regionally ranked wins out as we go through the process. So you can kind of feel next week they're on a little bit of shaky ground. And if they drop out, that's taking regionally ranked wins away from somebody else. So you can kind of feel that momentum coming. You see it in real time, but we kind of have to pretend that we don't, if that's the right way to say it, because the numbers are what the numbers are in the moment, and we rank teams accordingly. But yeah, when you rank a team and drop other teams out, that's affecting resumes down the road.
Buena Vista would be a good example of that. Is if you look at it, I'm sure that the case for them getting ranked, even though they have, I think I said 11. Did I say 11 losses? Let me go through that.
I think they're 13-11, Bob.
13-11. So they had 5 regionally ranked opponent wins, which jumps off the page. That's a huge total. Now, the second that they get ranked today and Coe and Wartburg come out, next week, Buena Vista has only 2 of those wins. And so you could have a situation here the rest of the way where Buena Vista now goes out and maybe Coe and Wartburg come back in, and now Buena Vista has all those RROs again. And so we just keep flipping Buena Vista until the music stops on Selection Sunday. Is that sort of how this potentially works?
Yeah, that's it. Those situations actually happen with some frequency that teams will go, that you basically, because to use your example, Coe and Wartburg were ranked, Buena Vista's resume goes up, but as soon as we rank them, we actually rank them over some of the teams they beat. And so then it's particularly at the bottom, Bob, it's an interesting dance that you're aware is happening. But again, you can't think about that because they have 5 regionally ranked wins this week, and so they deserve to be in. The ramifications of what comes next, that gets played out next week. And obviously you have games being played. So there's a chance that this all gets discarded, if you will, because somebody loses to a game you may not be anticipating, and it kind of changes it. But yeah, there's the constant, well, if we rank them, we've strengthened one resume,
right,
weakened another, and you can see it and feel it, and you know what's happening. And those of you that follow closely, you can actually start to look at, well, whose resumes did we strengthen
right,
the following week by who's in the regional rankings this week. You can absolutely see it. There are games, so that could change it. But yeah, that dynamic and the musical chairs, to use your example, that happens with some frequency, actually.
Shortly after the release of this thing today, you guys caught an error regarding Region 10, where St. Thomas of Texas was ranked. And just talk through, why the error happened, how you caught it, all that kind of stuff. Because I know that the folks on Twitter caught it right away, and I know you guys caught it right away. How did that play out?
Yeah, so I would like to be perceived as being transparent and forthcoming in this process, which is way more fun when we're talking criteria and I'm not having to acknowledge a mistake. we screwed it up. I don't know how else to say it. We missed it, and 100% a mistake, 100% my fault. The reason it happened, it's not making an excuse. The explanation is they are now a 3rd year provisional member. And so when you transition from 2nd to 3rd year, in the 3rd year, your criteria starts to count as a Division III team. So in the other teams, SOS and games against their 70%, they count there.
Right.
But they shouldn't be regionally ranked, but they appear in our numeric numbers. And so we treated them as if they belonged there. ranked them, really discovered it in real, as we were hitting send, we went, oh my goodness, we missed this, and corrected it. And, I would always rather have people question my competency than my integrity. We screwed it up, Bob. I don't know how else to offer any other explanation. Corrected it, and we're going to move forward from it. But that's the explanation. We just flat missed it.
And Pacific Lutheran is the benefactor of that as they move in, and they're on a 7-game winning streak. I got to tell you, Coach Schauer, and the Lutes are very happy to slide into spot 8 in Region 10 at this point. They're playing very well. They're leading the NWC. I think they're a game ahead of Whitworth. So that's made for an interesting Region 10. Let's talk a little bit about the SOS. There's certain averages that you talked about in November that have played out, Pool C selections. I'm interested where some of these bars stand now. It seems to me like an SOS that is under 0.500. If your SOS starts with a 0.4, it seems like you're in trouble in this deal. Is that fair to say? Does that become a big outlier?
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by in trouble. Do you mean to get ranked or to get selected as an at-large bid?
Well, let's talk about both of those. So I guess, let's talk about ranked first. I guess either way, an SOS under 0.500 kind of hurts you in the competitive process. Is that correct?
That's fair. I think the danger always when we say an SOS number of this hurts you in the rankings, it depends a little bit. If you have regionally ranked wins, either from a non-conference schedule or whatever the case may be, you can absolutely be ranked with a sub 500 SOS. Where it gets tough is if you have the sub 500 SOS, and as a result of that, have not played enough regionally ranked opponents to really get results in that category. That gets complicated. And so, if you're 17-4, 18-3, whatever the case may be, and you're under that, sort of your SOS starts with a 4, and you don't have regionally ranked wins, that resume gets complicated. But so does a resume that's 13-8 with a 0.585 SOS, but they're 1-6 against regionally ranked teams, right? I mean, that's a complicated resume too, because you've played better competition. Right. But you haven't necessarily won any of those games. And we are right now, Bob, we're ranking both of those types of resumes now at a rate that we didn't in the past.
Also, there's other criteria here. You're always reminding us that it's not just those 3 numbers, that there's head-to-head, there's common opponents. There's one that came up today that was being debated a little bit. I think it's at the end of Region 6. Hampton-Sydney and Mary Washington, I believe it is. And if you look at it, the resumes are fairly similar. I think Mary Washington's is a little bit better, but Hampton-Sydney beat Mary Washington. And so these head-to-head games are like enormous in the process. Talk through how you guys factor in head-to-head and common opponent.
Yeah, so again, it's the full resume. So you're kind of looking at, how does that head-to-head or common opponent kind of compare to the rest of the resume? The ones that are most difficult, Bob, are when the resume kind of tilts towards a particular team, Team A, but Team B won the game. And those are difficult because you're constantly trying to weigh how important is that head-to-head. And so some of it depends on how significant is the gap, if any, in the other criteria. And if Team A, who won the game, their criteria, SOS, winning percentage, regionally ranked wins, common opponents, they have another category that's pretty strong as well, or multiple categories, then you start to say, hey, that win probably, tilts it that direction. But a head-to-head isn't quite enough on its own. It's the full criteria. You could find plenty of examples of us ranking a team ahead of somebody that beat them. But when it gets to that close a comparison, that head-to-head, it matters. And it can often be sort of the thing that tilts it to a particular team if the rest of the criteria isn't pretty clearly towards the team who lost the head-to-head.
And all the criteria is used not just in the region, but when you have to compare outside of the region. So Region 8, Illinois Wesleyan, WashU beat Illinois Wesleyan. So the committee decided that Illinois Wesleyan's, the rest of the resume was good enough to trump the head-to-head. Now, when you do your top 16 this week, which we'll talk about a little more, but that reveal, you're going to have to stack up Illinois Wesleyan versus Wisconsin Oshkosh, and Illinois Wesleyan beat Oshkosh, but Oshkosh has tremendous resume across the board, probably better than Illinois Wesleyan. So you're using those criteria in the region and comparing across regions. Am I saying all that correct?
That is 100% correct. And actually, those are great examples. And both of them would cause great discussion because the head-to-head actually favors the team whose criteria is probably not quite as strong across the board. Right. And so those are complicated resumes. Those are great examples. But yes, it's exactly how we would compare teams across the country as well.
You used the term quality win earlier, and I'm interested now with all these regionally ranked opponent results that are out there. There's a lot more of them because you're ranking more teams. Are you digging into the RRO wins? So I'll give an example. So Oshkosh is ranked first in their region. Illinois Wesleyan has a win over Oshkosh. I don't even know another example to pick, but let's say another team has a win over a team that's very low in a region. Are you digging into those and saying that, hey, that win means more than that win? How does that play out?
Yeah, 100% we are. And probably we've always done that to some degree, Bob. And I think, as we kind of go through this process and kind of gain a little bit of a rhythm with the new regions and the greater number of teams, that is going to become a very, very important part of the process. So no question, a win over Oshkosh, which would be, someplace in the top 4 or 5 resumes in the country, mm-hmm. is just simply better. And in reality, significantly better than if we ranked all the resumes 1 through 83, a win over the 80th best resume. And so we have to factor that in as best we can. So, we absolutely do. And so if you have 1 or 2 regionally ranked wins, it matters who they're against. If it's towards the top of a region, that carries more weight than somebody who doesn't have a regionally ranked win or only has one against the team that's 7th, 8th, or 9th in another region. We absolutely break that down, Bob, and need to continue to do it because we are going to have a lot of teams in the 3 to 6 regionally ranked wins range when we get to Selection Sunday. Just the reality of it.
Absolutely. I had a question earlier. I think I'm going to try to answer this for you because I think I know the answer. Someone asked me, it was specific to WashU that has a star player that's out. And the question was, does the committee look at a team where a guy's out? And the answer is no. The answer is we're ranking the resume, we're ranking the results. And we don't get into if Jack Nolan's going to play this Friday or not. Did I answer that correctly?
You did, and it's 100% correct. And I saw one question was asked on Twitter about whether recency bias is a win in November the same as a win now in February, or a loss worse now. And the truth is, we take a total body of work. So if you beat the best team in the country in November, that still counts and it still matters. And if you lost 2 games this week, your resume is still what your resume is. So there isn't a tangible recency bias there. I mean, obviously we're always fighting the fact that we saw a team lose twice this week, but we don't apply it to the criteria.
And isn't that one of the great things about this? I've always thought, every year I'm always saying on Twitter the same thing, the opening week of the season, which is that I want to say that Marietta played Christopher Newport in the opening game. And I remember thinking,
very early. Yep.
Yeah. That is an enormous game out of the, Illinois Wesleyan played Hope and then Oshkosh. So there's no difference if those games are played on November 12th or February 23rd. And I think that is one of the really cool things about the Division III process. Would you agree with that?
I do, and you can quickly know. I think we all knew, to use the Wesley and Oshkosh example, how significant that was going to be, right? You knew both those teams were great, and so absolutely, you knew that there are wins there that early on that are going to sort of resonate the entire season.
Just one question on my end to remind everyone about the top 16 reveal, which is really cool. That's coming up Thursday
night.
It's going to be a show that's going to be cool. Those results will be through Sunday night, and so there's been some games, like last night. I want to say that like I remember Hope won a game, Nichols lost a game as we speak, Yeshiva's playing. I'm just making up games that I've been watching. None of the games Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for that matter will be factored in. So you could rank someone in your top 16 and their resume potentially could be better or worse than when you did it. Is that correct?
No, that is 100% correct. And I appreciate that reminder, Bob. And I would also be remiss to say this is an exercise. This is not an official document on part of the men's or women's basketball committees. It is meant to be something that generates some buzz, some excitement. It's something we start to do this time of year anyway, is to say, hey, start thinking about the best 20 resumes out there. Who are those teams? And so we just decided to release it. Let's talk about it, right? And I'm gonna tell you, Bob, we have our call tomorrow morning to go over this with the men's basketball committee, and all of us did that on our own sometime today after the rankings came out. It was really hard. So and I've seen the results and the votes, and some of them are very obvious, but it's the same thing when you get down 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, there are a lot of teams in that discussion, and it becomes very close. So it's a lot of fun. I hope people are excited about it. I'd love to see on Twitter the number of you that have sort of said, well, here's my top 16.
I got a top 16.
Yeah, you got a top 16. So I just think, I appreciate that you kind of point out that it's going to look different on Thursday night than it probably would be if we literally ranked it Thursday night. But it's meant to be something that we all kind of go, this is kind of cool, and to discuss and celebrate and debate and all that sort of stuff. So looking forward to it on Thursday night.
It really is cool. And again, the process is pretty black and white with this criteria and everything, but it also at some point becomes a discussion, because like I'm looking at my little top 16 that I tried to throw out there, and I'm looking at like I have a spot where it's Platteville is 826, 584, 7-2. In St. Joe, Connecticut, it has a perfect winning percentage, 518, 5-0. Like you're starting to split hairs at this point, and someone just got to make a decision. All of the spots, when you go 1 to 2, 2 to 3, they're all just like that. So
100%.
Yep. I asked you this last week. I don't think there's any too much more reason to follow up, because I don't think we have an answer. But the bracketing side, in a perfect world, your top 4, in a perfect world where Division III had all the money in the world, you could take your top 4 resumes, put those teams as 1 seeds, Division I term, not Division III term, put them in those. Like, for example, my top 4 right now, this is not the committee's endorsement or Coach Schauer's endorsement. I have Oshkosh, Randolph-Macon, Marietta, and Wesleyan. Those 4 geographically are absolutely perfect. Now, what happens if actually instead of, let's say, Wesleyan, it was Illinois Wesleyan number 4? Now you got some geographic issues. That's something that you guys have to deal with, correct? Is geography is a big deal in bracketing.
It is a big deal in bracketing, or at least can be, right? It depends on, we have to have places for teams to get to, by and large, within 600 miles of those sites. So without having looked at it very closely, I don't necessarily know how much flexibility we have with the 600 miles, but the broad premise, the broad point, Bob, is accurate. We've got to have teams that accommodate the entire country, and in terms of the Division III landscape. Yes.
Just another couple questions before we wrap this up, and I'll ask if I've missed anything from you, but I'm just curious, the balance of your time this year. I know how much time you're spending on this committee thing, because we're always talking and texting about this stuff. Like, how isn't this taking away from the coaching of the very highly ranked Wheaton Thunder? How are you balancing all of this stuff?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I would say fairly well, except maybe today. I mean, I would say today, the intensity of today was more than I have experienced previously. The call was very long. It was laborious. It was hard. And then we get done and we're about ready to send it, and we have the St. Thomas of Texas situation that is catching my attention to go, well, we've got to deal with this and deal with it honestly and directly and get it corrected. There was a lot of time today that I spent as chair of the men's basketball committee and not, prepping as I normally would for a Tuesday. So a couple things. When I was debating doing this, I talked to Kevin Vandestreek and Mike DeWitt, who are friends and have done this in the past. And I said, what would you tell me? And they both said, how good's your assistant? So there's a little bit of Coach Panner and I have been together for a long time. To be honest, if I'm honest, Bob, it hasn't changed much because he does a lot of our opponent prep anyway. He's better at it than I am. So that hasn't changed a ton. And until today, I didn't really feel today. I felt a little bit, it was a lot today. And so I think just going forward, I've got to kind of plan better for Mondays and realize that I think this is going to be my Tuesdays for a couple more weeks. It's just the reality of it. But Bob, I signed up for it, right? So the truth of the matter is I need to do both of them well. And one of them involves 420 teams. And I need to do that well. I chose to do this. And so I won't, it's an excuse to say I can't pay attention to the national committee stuff because I have to coach my team. I knew what I was getting into, but today was pretty intense.
Yeah, and it's not like your team is 4-20 and you can just check out. I mean, your team's right in the middle of all these conversations. And then the other kind of related question, like you're watching a ton of games. I'll be sitting there watching Mass Dartmouth play Wesleyan or something. I'm making this up, and I might get a text from you and be like, Mass Dartmouth is pretty good. You're watching games like the rest of us Yahoos are now. Is it fair to say you've watched more games than ever in your Division III career? Is that taking it too far?
No. I mean, I watch a lot of Division III basketball, Bob, but it usually involves the teams in the CCIW and their opponents. I am watching more of the country this year than ever before. And, we don't do the eye test, but I feel like there is something, there's some responsibility as the chair to be able to say, I watched that team play. And because I know the decisions we make are impacting people positively and negatively professionally. And so I feel, and I think when I talked to the other chairs, Mike DeWitt would talk about how many of the games he would watch, and actually encouraged me a while to stop watching some. You always feel like there's one you could be watching. But yeah, there's no question. This is the most Division III basketball I've watched that I'm not involved with. It doesn't impact Wheaton in any way, shape, or form, but I've watched a lot of teams play this year.
Yeah. Let me ask this, anything that we missed? I think we covered the topics that we intended to. Anything that I missed that you wanted to bring up?
No, I think we talked a little bit beforehand, and again, I appreciate the platform, and want people to feel like this process is open as much as it can be, and we're kind of in this together, if that makes sense. I mean, the decisions are up to the 10 members of our committee, but we all love Division III basketball and want to get this right and enjoy it through the process.
And I know that everyone really has, I said this last time, has appreciated the transparency. I hope this can be a model for the future where the committee chair is so accessible to media outlets or whoever would like to talk to them. This has been really, really cool. Again, I think the process is pretty clear to the point where some smart guys with computer models just about nailed this thing today. And I have a personal goal of getting these top 16 right. I got a little more work to do before Thursday, but I really think I can get these 16. So I'm working on that. Coach Schauer, thank you so much for everything you're doing, being so available. I'll give it to you. Any final words before we close out QCast season 2, episode 15 here?
No, let's keep going. This has been fun, and we're getting every day closer to Selection Sunday and start of the tournament, and just excited both as a professional to be on the professional side, and this is what I do for a living, but also as a fan. I just love small college basketball, so excited to keep going.
That's Mike Schauer. Please thank your committee for us. That committee has also been very accessible and been great about this. Thank you so much. Go Wheat and Thunder. We'll talk to you soon, Mike. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bob.